All you got to do is see. All you got to do is believe. There's your sermon. I love you. Goodbye. What is faith? First, let me say I'm a geek. I'm a super geek. My kids love to tell me that. I love school. And if I were eternally wealthy, I would spend most of my time in the classroom, either teaching or learning. I would stockpile certificates and degrees, getting an amen from Yambi right here, like a kid in the candy store. Anyone up to be my patron, please? Oh, I got a hands up. Look at that. But when I was a kid, and perhaps you felt this way as well, the biggest unexpected joy was getting out of school early, or coming late, or missing school altogether for some important big event or a big deal. And so when the Washington football team won the Super Bowl in 1987, my family decided we were all going to go downtown to the parade through Washington streets, celebrating their win, and in the middle of the school day. I was 12 years old. I had my little trusty Kodak camera. Does anyone remember cameras? With film that you had to put in, and so every picture was precious because you only had like this many to take. My excited little hands held onto my camera as we went downtown to join the other thousands of fans. Remember parades? Yeah. The waves and throngs of people all pressed up against each other, vying for the very best spot. And if you were still young enough to be put on the shoulders of an adult to watch and delight. Parades to me as a kid were like the Russian dolls of unexpected delights. You probably remember that feeling. Every new group or throng or cheerleaders or the football team coming by on the parade route. What's next? What do we get to see next? And I was so swept up in the excitement of that chilly and yet electric day that I asked to go up along the parade route so I could get better pictures on my little Kodak camera. So off I went with their permission, bundled in my puppy purple coat, dodging in and out of the cheering fans. It was so great to be part of something big, to be part of that joy and pride, watching the football players grinning from ear to ear, the marching bands down the street. You could feel them, the bouncing cheerleaders that exuded joy, until I looked around and realized I had no idea where I was. Even worse, I had no idea where my family was. I was lost. And my 12-year-old little brain freaked out as I searched the crowd's pre-cell phones, pre-pinging locators. I searched the crowds desperately as everyone started to disperse as the very last part of the parade passed. I still remember the panic of that day, and if you're a parent, you may remember that feeling of, the sheer panic of being lost, swallowed up by so many strangers, searching each and every face for recognition of familiarity, waiting for the relief of them to scoop me up, but 1,000% certain that they were going to be furious with me for wandering off too far. And then I distinctly remember thinking I should just stop. Just stop. Stop and wait, and they would find me. I had no idea what old Girl Scout teaching crept into my thoughts, or a safety message, or a PBS after-school broadcast, but whatever nudged me in that moment, I stopped. I sat down on the curb along the parade route and waited for my parents to find me, and thankfully they did. I remember that day because I thought it was my first experience of what faith is. I believed that they would find me. I believed that they loved me enough, at least in that moment, and that meant that they would try to find me. I trusted that. I trusted them. You know, this is one entrance into faith. We experience faith first before we start thinking about it and chewing on it. At its most basic, and for many of our earliest experience of faith is that trust, that basic confidence in something, in someone, a supreme being, the goodness of life, the kindness of strangers, your spouse, or loved ones. Faith in your parents or caregivers, or I should say some parents, to find you again and again when you've wandered off the path. And then life comes in as we grow, right? Does it get easier? The messiness of people, the hard choices and hard lives of us, the doubts, the pain, the frustrations, the resentments come in as we grow older. We begin to know a bigger world than ourselves. We experience war and poverty and famine. We learn of the legacy of slavery and the millions of lives lost in the Holocaust and genocide around the world. And we feel more deeply the pains of life and know all too well what all people are capable of. People we love die, break our hearts, leave us, or we leave them, and at times we are cast adrift. So many of us wrestle with what is faith? What is faith outside of just that innate confidence in trust? A loose definition that I've been playing with is you can ask a lot of folks who I've talked to this week, what is faith? Faith is the decision to believe in something greater than ourselves, in my humble opinion. But I'll say that again. Faith is the decision to believe in something greater than ourselves. And I'll break that down into 3 parts. The decision. To decide is to make an intentional choice. We are thoughtful beings. We can dream and scheme and play with the best of them. But thoughts are like clouds, wandering this way and that. But when we decide, we commit. We are intentional about a certain mindset, a way of being. It is a choice. We decide, like I did that day on the parade route, to sit down, to pause, to point our lives towards something greater, meaning and purpose. And making a choice is part of our legacy as a people of a liberal faith. Quoting Elaine Pagels in her book, Why Religion? Maybe that's another sermon. Why religion? Elaine Pagel writes, ever since the 2nd century, Christian leaders calling themselves Orthodox, also known as straight thinking, have defined choice as heresy. The Greek term translated as heresy means exactly that, choice. Choice. So when we choose, we are returning to our proud heretical roots. Our roots that affirm our belief that revelation is not sealed, and that wisdom and truth, the evolving nature of science and our understanding of the world and ourselves, continues to inform and nurture our lives. To be a heretic is to choose our path, to continue on in our search for truth and meaning, which brings us to that second part. We choose to believe. We choose to believe. To believe. Just saying those two words together, or thinking about those two words together, a certain show of a 5-minute length comes to mind. Anyone can think of it? I'm going to look at the chat. This I believe. Anyone ever listened or watched or heard or read any of This I Believe? This I Believe started in 1951. It was just a 5-minute radio program hosted by journalist Edward R. Murrow. He described the show as encouraging both famous people and everyday folk to write short essays about their own personal motivation in life and then read them on air. This, I believe, became a cultural phenomenon that stressed individual belief rather than religious dogma. Murrow wrote that the reason he started the This, I Believe project was after his service in World War II and the beginnings of the Cold War. He wrote, "The uncertainty of the economic future, the beginnings and the shadow of war, the atomic bomb, the army service for oneself or others, and the frustration of young people facing the future. Scenes of these themes are enduring, and of course they are. We are still wrestling with living life on life's terms, not our terms. We all do. Which means that this, I believe, is described that people will live happier and richer lives if they deliberately decide what we want from life, what they want in material things and the relative importance of moral and spiritual things. To believe, I believe, to believe is to set a beacon on the hill and say, that is the light that I am guided by. I believe in kindness. I believe in science. I believe in service. I believe in generosity. I believe in a loving, merciful God. Or better yet, I choose to believe. Because all beliefs are tested, expanded, explored, wrestled with. If we don't engage our beliefs, then they fall flat and wither on the vine. There is life in the wrestling. Just as Jacob with the angel, we are rest and we are blessed. If we stop there, though, if we stop at we choose to believe in X, Y, or Z, then we miss the pulsing, meaty heart that holds it all together and gives life meaning. Like the voices of young children. The meaty heart that holds it all together and gives faith and life its meaning, that which is greater than ourselves. That which is greater than ourselves. As Unitarian Universalists, we say and we live as a people of covenant. We are bound to one another in the fabric of life. We are bound. I say that each time and remember that the root word of religion in Latin is religio, which means to bind. We are bound up in the interdependent web of all of existence. We are bound to our ancestors who survived long enough, praise be, to ensure future generations. We are bound to those who will go after us, inheriting this world that we've either made better through our choices, our love, and our service, or not. We are bound to something greater than ourselves. For some, that is God. For some, it is the God of our understanding. For some, it is wisdom and science. For others, it is our common good. It is humanity, the collective whole and liberation. Do you know what I mean? Thank you. Can I hear that again? What sets your heart on fire? And since we are bound, we show up for one another because we believe in love. A courageous love that welcomes the stranger, feeds the poor, heals the sick, and comforts the dying. We show up for worship and service because we believe in our collective resolve to build and sustain this spiritual community and the world. Because here is a place where you are a we. I love saying that. This is a place where you are a we. We show up for justice because we believe that without our witness, the agitation and protests of people of faith, the world will tilt towards our basest natures: selfishness, self-centeredness, and mindless hedonism, rampant individualism, toxic and cutthroat capitalism that uses people and the earth like tissues. We show up for those without institutional power, for those on the margins who are vulnerable and disenfranchised, because without the work of people of faith and conscience, they, and so many of us, remain invisible and suffering. We show up because we have to. Faith is to choose to believe in something greater than ourselves, and then bonus. We have meaning. We have purpose. We have a framework to live our lives and a place to return to when our spirits wane and the world gets overwhelming and life gets lifey. We have an identity like a garment wrapped around our shoulders because we know we are part of the good in the world. Don't you need to hear that message sometimes? We know we are part of the good in the world, the transformational, the hopeful, the loving, and the just. We say, Spirit of life, roots hold me close, but wings set me free. And we have to go no farther than our own universalist roots. The universalists believed that God is so great and loves so much there is no heaven or hell, because a loving God would not send the people to hell. And so their core teaching of our universalist kin, who taught that we make, we create, and we sustain heaven or hell right here in this world, here in our lives, here in our homes and our hearts. To put it simply, the Universalists taught us to what? Love the hell out of this world. See what they did there? If you love the hell out of this world, we bring what? Heaven on earth. Through our courageous love, through our unending compassion and grace, we love the hell out of this world. All the kids love it when I say that. But it's theologically accurate. So yes, we may veer off course. We may get lost in the crowd. We may find ourselves alone and waiting on the curb, waiting to be found. And faith, to choose to believe in something greater than ourselves, reignites our passion for meaning and purpose, and we find our way home. Amen. Blessed be. And Ashe.